The rifle's weight pressed against Elena Vasquez's shoulder like a familiar friend, but today it felt heavier than usual. 2,500 meters downrange, the wind carried desert sand across the proving ground in lazy spirals, each grain catching the morning sun like tiny fragments of shattered glass. The observation tower loomed behind her, filled with voices that had been whispering the same words for 8 months. She'll never make it. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Winds picking up from the northwest, 2.7 miles per hour, gusting to 4, called Sergeant Major Thompson from the spotting position. His weathered face showed no emotion, but Elena caught the slight tremor in his voice. In 30 years of military service, he'd never seen what they were about to attempt. Target is confirmed at exactly 547 meters. Elena's breathing slowed to match the rhythm of her heartbeat. Through the scope's crystal-clear lens, she could see the impossible target. A single bullet, suspended by nearly invisible wire, spinning slowly in the desert heat. The brass casing gleamed like a golden needle in a haystack of sand and stone. To split it cleanly in half would require precision beyond anything recorded in military history. "This is insane," muttered Lieutenant Colonel Hayes from somewhere behind her. His polished boots scraped against the concrete firing platform as he shifted his weight. "Even if she hits it, which is mathematically improbable, the physics alone." "Sir, with respect." Elena's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "Physics is exactly why this will work." She didn't turn around. Didn't break her focus, but her words carried the weight of 8 months of ridicule. 8 months of being told she was too small, too young, too female for the elite sniper program. The bullet's center of mass, the rotational velocity, the impact trajectory. I've calculated every variable. Behind her, she heard Colonel Martinez clear his throat. He was the only one who'd believed in her from the beginning, the only one who'd seen past the obvious obstacles to the mind that could perform trigonometric calculations faster than most people could use calculators. "Elena, you don't have to prove anything today. Your scores already qualify you for—" "No, sir." This time she did turn, her dark eyes meeting his with fierce determination. "They said I'd never make sniper. They said women don't have the physical strength, the emotional control, the killer instinct." She gestured toward the observation tower where 24 military officials sat with their clipboards and skeptical expressions. "Today, I proved them wrong." The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the Nevada desert range. This wasn't just any proving ground. It was the same place where legendary snipers had earned their reputations, where records had been set and broken, where careers were made or destroyed with a single shot. The facility stretched for miles in every direction, dotted with targets, obstacles, and the ghosts of countless training exercises. Elena had arrived here 8 months ago as part of the military's pilot program to integrate women into frontline sniper units. She'd been one of 12 candidates, all exceptional in their own right. But one by one, they'd been eliminated. Not by lack of skill, though the instructors found reasons to suggest otherwise, but by a system designed to exclude rather than include. "Vasquez, your shot grouping yesterday was inconsistent," Instructor Davis had said just last week, his clipboard covering what Elena knew were actually superior results. "Sniping requires absolute reliability, not occasional excellence." But Elena had kept her own records, had documented every shot, every measurement, every small victory that somehow never made it into the official reports. She'd practiced in secret, using her off-duty hours to access the ranges when the skeptics weren't watching. She'd studied ballistics texts until her eyes burned, had memorized wind patterns and atmospheric pressure variations until they became second nature. The bullet hanging 547 meters away had been her idea. If they wanted proof of her capabilities, she'd give them something unprecedented. The physics were actually simpler than most people realized. Hit the bullet at precisely the right angle with precisely the right velocity, and the laws of motion would do the rest. The challenge wasn't the science, it was the execution. Final wind reading, Thompson called out, his spotting scope trained on flags placed at intervals across the range. Northwest, 3.2 miles per hour, steady. He paused, lowering his eye from the scope to look at Elena with something that might have been respect. "I've been doing this for 3 decades, kid. This shot, it's not just about proving them wrong." Elena nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. Every woman who came after her would be measured against this moment. Every doubt cast on female capabilities in combat would either be reinforced or shattered based on what happened in the next 60 seconds. She settled back into position, feeling the familiar embrace of the rifle stock against her cheek. The weapon was a custom-built .338 Lapua Magnum, its every component precision-engineered for exactly this kind of long-range work. She'd spent weeks adjusting the trigger pull, the scope mounts, the bipod tension, until the rifle felt like an extension of her own body. Through the scope, the target came into sharp focus. The bullet spun slowly on its wire, catching sunlight on each revolution. At this distance, it appeared smaller than a grain of rice, an impossible target that would require her to compensate for wind drift, bullet drop, atmospheric pressure, temperature variations, and the Coriolis effect caused by the Earth's rotation. "Whenever you're ready, Vasquez," Colonel Martinez said softly. His voice carried across the silent range like a prayer. Elena's finger found the trigger, applying the precise 4-pound pressure she'd practiced thousands of times. But she didn't fire. Not yet. Something wasn't right. The calculations in her mind shifted, recalculated, factored in a variable she'd almost missed. "Hold," she whispered, more to herself than to the observers. Through the scope, she watched a dust devil forming 300 meters downrange, its spiral of sand and debris moving slowly across her bullet's projected path. In 30 seconds, it would create a wind shear that could throw off her trajectory by inches, more than enough to miss entirely. The silence stretched like a held breath. Behind her, she could almost hear the observers' thoughts. Another excuse, another delay, more evidence that women couldn't handle pressure. "What's the holdup, Vasquez?" Lieutenant Colonel Hayes's voice carried barely concealed impatience. "If you're having second thoughts—" "Dust devil at 700 meters," Elena replied calmly, her eye never leaving the scope. "Moving northeast at approximately 2 meters per second. It'll clear the flight path in 25 seconds. Thompson swung his spotting scope toward the area Elena had indicated. After a moment, he let out a low whistle. "Son of a bitch, she's right. I didn't even see it forming." The dust devil danced across the desert floor like a miniature tornado, picking up sand and debris before gradually dissipating in the morning heat. Elena counted heartbeats, calculated wind shear patterns, and waited for the perfect moment when all variables would align. "Clear," she announced, her breathing falling into the rhythm she'd practiced countless times. Inhale, halfway exhale, hold. The crosshairs settled on the spinning bullet, rock steady, despite the impossible distance. "Send it," Thompson whispered, his voice barely audible through the spotting scope. But Elena had already squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report cracked across the desert like thunder, followed immediately by the whistle of the bullet cutting through 2,500 meters of Nevada air. In the split second between firing and impact, Elena's mind tracked the projectile's path, calculating its trajectory through atmospheric layers, wind gradients, and gravitational pull. The observers in the tower leaned forward as one, binoculars and spotting scopes trained on the distant target. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then, through the shimmering heat waves, they saw it. The bullet struck true, splitting the target cleanly in half. Both pieces spun away in perfect symmetry, glinting in the desert sun before falling to the sand below. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the whisper of wind across the range and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Elena lowered her rifle, the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Jesus Christ," someone breathed from the observation tower. Thompson lowered his spotting scope, his weathered face showing an expression Elena had never seen before. Genuine awe. Confirmed hit. Target destroyed. Distance, 547 meters. He paused, looking at Elena with new respect. "That's not just a record, Vasquez. That's not even supposed to be possible." Colonel Martinez stepped forward, his hand coming to rest on Elena's shoulder. "Outstanding work, Sergeant. I think it's safe to say you've made your point." During her cool-down stretches, Elena allowed herself to remember why she'd chosen this path. Growing up in a small Texas town, she'd been the daughter of a high school math teacher and a mechanical engineer who'd never let gender limit her curiosity about how things worked. Her childhood had been filled with robotics competitions, math Olympics, and weekend hunting trips with her father, who taught her that shooting was simply applied physics made visible. "Elena, you have a gift," her father had said during one of their last hunting trips before she'd enlisted, but gifts only matter if you use them for something important. The military had seemed like the natural choice, a place where precision and dedication were valued over politics and prejudice. She'd enlisted as a designated marksman, excelled in every training program, and gradually worked her way into more specialized units. But the closer she'd come to elite status, the more resistance she'd encountered. "Vasquez, you understand that sniping isn't just about shooting, right?" Captain Williams had said during her first week of sniper school. "It's about operating behind enemy lines, carrying heavy equipment for days, making life-and-death decisions under extreme stress. It's about killing people, not targets." Elena had nodded respectfully, not mentioning that she'd already killed 12 enemy combatants during her previous deployment as a designated marksman. Not mentioning that she'd carried her equipment farther and longer than half the men in her unit. Not mentioning that her psychological evaluations consistently showed better stress management and decision-making capabilities than the program average. "I understand, sir. I'm ready for the full scope of responsibilities." But understanding the requirements and being given the opportunity to fulfill them had proven to be different things entirely. After her workout, Elena would report to the armory for equipment maintenance, a task that had become both meditation and education. She'd learned to disassemble and reassemble every weapon in the sniper inventory, not just her assigned rifle. She'd studied the ballistic characteristics of dozens of ammunition types, the thermal properties of different barrel materials, and the optical physics of various scope systems. "Damn, Vasquez, you know more about this stuff than most of our armorers," Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez had observed, watching Elena perform microscopic adjustments to a scope's internal mechanisms. "Where'd you learn all this?" "Books mostly, engineering background, and YouTube if I'm being honest." Elena's hands moved with surgical precision as she calibrated the scope's tracking system. "My father always said that if you're going to use a tool, you should understand how it works down to the molecular level." Rodriguez laughed, but it was the appreciative laugh of one professional recognizing another. "Your father sounds like a smart man." "He is. Was an engineer for 30 years before he started teaching. Still calls me every week to discuss whatever technical challenge I'm working on." Elena paused in her work, a rare smile softening her intense focus. "Last week we spent 2 hours calculating optimal barrel harmonics for consistent shot placement." "And your mother?" "Math teacher. She's the one who taught me that every problem has a solution if you're willing to work through enough variables." The smile faded as Elena returned to her work. "She also taught me that some people will never accept your solution, no matter how correct it is, if it challenges their assumptions about who you're supposed to be." The daily routine continued with classes and briefings that often felt more like examinations than education. Elena would sit in the back of rooms filled with men who'd already accepted her presence but never quite her equality, listening to instructors who spoke about her as if she weren't there. "Now, in a real-world scenario," Instructor Davis would say, clicking through slides showing combat situations, "you might need to carry wounded team members. Physical strength becomes a critical factor." His eyes would find Elena in the audience. "Some of you might need to consider whether you're putting your teammates at risk by accepting assignments you're not physically capable of completing." Elena would raise her hand, her voice calm and professional. "Instructor Davis, what's the maximum load requirement for a sniper team member in mountainous terrain?" Davis would consult his notes, slightly annoyed at being questioned. "Approximately 80 pounds of equipment, plus personal gear. I carried 93 pounds during the 20-mile ruck march last month and finished 3rd overall." Elena's statement was delivered without pride or defensiveness, simply as data. If physical capability is the concern, perhaps we should discuss the 7 team members who didn't complete that exercise. The room would fall silent, her male classmates torn between admiration for her directness and discomfort at being indirectly criticized. Davis would clear his throat and move on to the next slide, but Elena would catch the slight nod from Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, one of the few instructors who seemed to judge her purely on performance rather than presumption. Evenings were for study, and Elena's quarters had become a library of military manuals, physics, textbooks, and historical accounts of famous snipers. She'd read every book ever written about Carlos Hathcock, studied the techniques of Lyudmila Pavlichenko, and analyzed the innovations of modern precision shooting pioneers. But she'd also gone deeper, studying atmospheric physics, materials, science, and advanced mathematics that most snipers never encountered. You know, you don't have to be better than everyone, Sergeant Chen had observed one evening, finding Elena in the base library at 2,200 hours, surrounded by open textbooks and pages of handwritten calculations. You just have to be good enough. Elena looked up from a complex equation relating barrel vibration harmonics to shot accuracy. Good enough for who? The instructors who think I don't belong here. The commanding officers who see me as a political experiment. The teammates who wonder if I'll freeze up under fire. She gestured to the books surrounding her. I can't just be good enough, Danny. I have to be undeniably, unquestionably, mathematically superior. Because anything less than perfection gives them permission to say I don't deserve to be here. Chen sat down across from her, his expression serious. That's a hell of a burden to carry. It's the burden every woman in this program carries. The difference is, most of them don't make it this far. Elena returned to her calculations, her pencil moving across the paper with mechanical precision. Yesterday's shot wasn't about showing off. It was about creating a data point so clear, so unprecedented that even the skeptics would have to acknowledge capability over gender. And did it work? Elena's pencil paused for a moment. Hayes is calling for an investigation. They're suggesting equipment malfunction or environmental miscalculation. Tomorrow, they'll probably want me to repeat the shot under different conditions, with different equipment, with independent observers. She looked up at Chen with tired eyes. It's never enough, Danny. Excellence just raises the bar for what they expect next. The conversation was interrupted by Sergeant Major Thompson, who appeared in the library doorway with unusual, quiet formality. Vasquez, you need to come with me. Colonel Martinez wants to see you in his office. Elena felt her stomach drop. Late-night summons to commanding officers. Offices were rarely good news, especially for personnel whose presence in elite programs remained politically controversial. She gathered her books and followed Thompson through the maze of corridors that connected the educational facilities to the administrative complex. Colonel Martinez's office was a study in military precision and personal achievement. Medals and commendations covered one wall, while another displayed photographs from various deployments and training exercises spanning a 25-year career. Martinez himself sat behind a desk covered with reports and evaluations, his expression unreadable. Sit down, Elena. The use of her first name was unexpected, suggesting either very good news or very bad news. We need to discuss your future in this program. Elena remained silent, having learned that responding too quickly often revealed anxiety that could be used against her later. Martinez opened a thick file and began reading. Outstanding marksmanship scores, exceptional performance in all physical requirements, superior knowledge of equipment and procedures, psychological evaluations indicating excellent stress management and decision-making capabilities. He closed the file and looked at her directly. By every measurable standard, you're one of the most qualified candidates we've ever had. Thank you, sir. Elena kept her voice neutral, waiting for the inevitable but that would follow. Your shot yesterday has created significant attention from higher command levels. The footage is being analyzed by experts across multiple services. There's discussion about incorporating your techniques into advanced training protocols. Martinez paused, his fingers drumming against the desk. There's also discussion about whether exceptional individual performance creates unrealistic expectations for program standards. There it was, the double-edged nature of excellence that Elena had come to know intimately. Success too visible became a problem rather than an achievement. Sir, I'm prepared to repeat the shot under any conditions command considers appropriate. I'm also prepared to share my calculation methods and training techniques with any personnel who might benefit from them. Martinez smiled, but it wasn't an entirely happy expression. That's exactly the kind of response I expected from you. And exactly the kind of response that makes some people uncomfortable. He leaned back in his chair. Elena, do you know why I've supported your presence in this program? No, sir. Because 30 years ago, I was told I'd never make it through officer training. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because my background was wrong. Too poor, too rough around the edges, too different from what they expected officers to be. Martinez's voice carried the weight of old wounds that had never quite healed. I succeeded despite those expectations, not because of them. And I learned that sometimes the most valuable team members are the ones who don't fit the conventional mold. Elena felt a flicker of hope, but Martinez's expression remained serious. However, I also learned that being different means being held to different standards. Higher standards. Unfair standards. He reopened her file. Your shot yesterday was remarkable. It was also public, recorded, and impossible to ignore. That makes you visible in ways that might not benefit your long-term career goals. Sir, I don't understand. There are people in this program, in this service, who prefer their exceptions to be less exceptional. They're comfortable with token inclusion, but uncomfortable with demonstrated superiority. Martinez's voice carried a warning. Your success yesterday has made you a symbol, Elena. Symbols are powerful, but they're also targets. Elena felt the familiar weight of institutional politics settling over her shoulders like a lead blanket. What are you recommending, sir? I'm recommending that you continue being exactly who you are, continue exceeding every standard they set, continue proving that merit matters more than prejudice. Martinez's expression grew stern. But I'm also warning you that the resistance you've faced so far was nothing compared to what's coming next. Success this visible makes enemies out of people who might have otherwise remained neutral. As Elena left Martinez's office and walked back to her quarters through the desert night, she reflected on the contradictions of her position. 8 months ago, she'd been told she'd never make it through sniper training. Yesterday, she'd achieved something unprecedented in the history of precision shooting. Tonight, she'd been warned that her success might be more dangerous than her failures. The base around her was quiet, most personnel asleep in preparation for another day of training and evaluation. In her quarters, Elena returned to her books and calculations, working late into the night on problems that had no clear solutions. Outside her window, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly under star-filled skies, vast and indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in the military installations scattered across its surface. She was different, exceptional, and increasingly isolated by her own capabilities. But she was also closer than ever to proving that excellence could overcome expectations, that capability could triumph over conventional thinking. The question now was whether she could survive the consequences of being right. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes presided over the proceedings with barely concealed satisfaction. Sergeant Vasquez, this inquiry has been convened to examine the circumstances surrounding your claimed successful engagement of a target at 547 meters on October 15th. His emphasis on the word claimed was subtle but unmistakable. Sir, the shot was witnessed by multiple qualified observers and recorded on video from 3 different angles, quote. Elena replied, her voice maintaining professional calm despite the growing tension in the room. Yes, about that recording equipment. Major Patterson, the investigating officer from the Inspector General's office, opened a thick folder and began reading. The primary camera system experienced what appears to be a brief malfunction just prior to impact. The video shows the target intact, then cuts to static for approximately 0.3 seconds, then shows the target destroyed. Elena felt her stomach drop. Sir, I wasn't aware of any recording problems. Of course you weren't, Hayes interjected. The question is whether someone else might have been aware. He gestured to Sergeant Major Thompson, who sat uncomfortably in the witness chair. Sergeant Major, please describe your observation of the shot. Thompson's weathered face showed the strain of a career soldier caught between truth and politics. Sir, I observed Sergeant Vasquez fire 1 round from her assigned weapon system. I observed the target through spotting scope and confirmed direct impact and destruction of the suspended bullet. Through a spotting scope, Major Patterson emphasized, making notes, at a distance of over 2.5 kilometers. Are you confident in your ability to observe such precise details at that range? Sir, I've been spotting for snipers for 15 years. I know what I saw. Hayes leaned forward. What you saw, Sergeant Major, was a target that was intact, then destroyed. But did you actually see the impact of Sergeant Vasquez's bullet on that target? Thompson hesitated, and Elena realized the trap that had been laid. At 500+ meters, even through a spotting scope, the actual moment of impact would be nearly impossible to observe with absolute certainty. The physics of light travel time, atmospheric distortion, and human perception created enough ambiguity for doubt. Sir, the timing was consistent with the bullet's calculated flight time. The target destruction occurred exactly when expected. Timing, Major Patterson repeated. How precise is your timing, Sergeant Major? Were you using a stopwatch? Atomic clock synchronization? Elena watched Thompson struggle with questions designed to undermine rather than illuminate. These officers weren't seeking truth. They were constructing doubt, creating enough uncertainty to justify the conclusion they'd already reached. The questioning continued for hours, dissecting every aspect of the shot with forensic precision. The rifle's specifications were examined and re-examined. Ammunition was analyzed for consistency. Environmental data was questioned. Elena's training records were scrutinized for any evidence of unconventional methods or suspicious preparation. Sergeant Vasquez, Colonel Davidson from the base commander's staff finally addressed her directly. "Your performance throughout this program has been unusual, consistently exceptional, but in ways that don't always align with traditional training methods." He consulted his notes. "For instance, you've been observed using self-constructed electronic devices during practice sessions. Can you explain the nature of these devices?" Elena straightened in her chair. "Sir, I designed and built a computerized training system that allows me to practice trigger control and follow-through without live ammunition. The system measures micro-movements and provides immediate feedback for improvement." "Interesting. And where did you acquire the technical knowledge to build such sophisticated equipment?" "Engineering background, sir. Plus independent study in electronics and software programming." Davidson made notes. "So you have capabilities beyond those taught in standard sniper training?" "Yes, sir. I believe in understanding the complete technical basis for precision shooting, not just the immediate tactical applications." "I see." Davidson's tone carried implications that Elena found troubling. "And have you shared these innovations with your instructors or fellow students?" Elena sensed the trap but answered honestly. "I've offered to share my methods with anyone interested, sir. Most of the other students prefer traditional training approaches." "Most of the other students don't achieve shots that defy ballistic probability," Hayes interjected. "Tell me, Sergeant Vasquez, have you ever heard of trajectory modification systems, electronic deflection devices, guided projectile technology?" Elena's heart began racing as she realized the direction of the questioning. "Sir, are you suggesting that I somehow cheated? That I used illegal equipment to fake the shot?" "I'm not suggesting anything, Sergeant. I'm asking whether you have knowledge of technologies that could theoretically produce the observed results through means other than conventional marksmanship." "Sir, the shot was fired from a standard .338 Lapua Magnum rifle using standard military ammunition under direct observation by qualified personnel. The rifle was inspected before and after firing. I had no opportunity to modify the ammunition or install any electronic systems." Major Patterson leaned forward. "But you would have the knowledge to design such systems, wouldn't you?" Elena felt the walls closing in around her. Her expertise, which should have been an asset, was being twisted into evidence of potential deception. "Sir, yes, I have the theoretical knowledge to design guidance systems. I also have the theoretical knowledge to build nuclear weapons and hack computer networks. Having knowledge doesn't mean I've used it inappropriately." The room fell silent except for the scratch of pens on paper and the hum of recording equipment. Elena realized she was witnessing something beyond simple skepticism. This was character assassination disguised as investigation. Colonel Martinez, who had remained silent throughout most of the proceedings, finally spoke. "If I may, gentlemen, I'd like to point out that Sergeant Vasquez has volunteered to repeat the shot under any conditions we specify. If there are concerns about equipment tampering or environmental manipulation, we can eliminate those variables." Hayes smiled coldly. "Actually, Colonel, we've decided that repeating the shot isn't necessary. What we need is a complete technical analysis of how such a shot might be achieved through unconventional means." Elena realized she was being railroaded, but military protocol demanded she continue participating in her own destruction. "Sir, I respectfully request that you allow me to demonstrate my capabilities under controlled conditions. I'm confident I can repeat similar precision shooting with completely independent equipment and oversight." "That won't be necessary, Sergeant." Major Patterson closed his folder with finality. "We have sufficient information to complete our assessment." The hearing concluded without resolution, but Elena could read the verdict in the officers' expressions. Within hours, rumors were spreading throughout the base like wildfire. Whispers followed her through corridors, conversations stopped when she entered rooms, and fellow students began avoiding her company. "Is it true you use some kind of computer guidance system?" asked Private Rodriguez during mess hall dinner, his voice carrying across the table despite his obvious attempt at discretion. "No, it's not true," Elena replied, but she could see the doubt in his eyes. the suspicion that had been planted by official investigation. Sergeant Chen found her later that evening, cleaning her rifle in the armory with obsessive thoroughness. "You know this is bullshit, right?" he said, settling onto a bench across from her workstation. "Knowing it's bullshit and proving it's bullshit are different things." Elena's hands moved with mechanical precision, breaking down and reassembling her rifle's action. They've created enough doubt to justify whatever decision they were planning to make anyway. "So what are you going to do?" Elena paused in her work, looking at the rifle that had become both her pathway to recognition and the instrument of her potential destruction. "I'm going to keep doing what I came here to do. I'm going to continue training, continue improving, continue proving that capability matters more than politics. Even if they kick you out of the program. Especially if they try to kick me out of the program." The next morning brought new challenges designed to test Elena's resolve and potentially create justification for her removal. She was assigned to advanced urban warfare training exercises that emphasized physical demands and team coordination, areas where her gender could be used against her more easily than pure marksmanship. "Vasquez, you're on point," barked Instructor Williams as the six-person team prepared for a simulated building clearance. "Standard rules of engagement. Eliminate all hostile targets while avoiding civilian casualties." Elena nodded, checking her equipment and mentally preparing for the exercise. Urban warfare was different from precision shooting. Faster, more chaotic, requiring split-second decisions under extreme stress. It was also, not coincidentally, an area where traditional masculine advantages in size and strength could be emphasized over her strengths in precision and analysis. The exercise began at 0800 with full combat loads and simulated ammunition that would register hits electronically while providing realistic recoil and muzzle flash. Elena led the team through a series of connected buildings, each room presenting different challenges and potential threats. The first floor proceeded smoothly. Elena's movements were efficient and calculated, her decision-making process balancing speed with caution. She identified targets quickly, distinguished between combatants and civilians with excellent accuracy, and coordinated team movements with clear, concise communications. But the second floor had been designed as a trap. "Movement, second window, north wall," Elena called out, taking a firing position that provided cover for her team while maintaining visual contact with the potential threat. "Civilian or combatant?" asked Corporal Jenkins, the team's designated breacher. Elena studied the figure through her scope, analyzing clothing, posture, and behavior patterns. Something felt wrong. The figure was too perfectly positioned, too obviously presented as a dilemma. Uncertain, approaching for better identification. "Negative, Vasquez. Take the shot." "We don't have time for extended observation." Instructor Williams's voice came through the communication system with unusual urgency. Elena hesitated. The figure appeared to be holding something, but at this angle and with the lighting conditions, she couldn't determine whether it was a weapon or an everyday object. Standard rules of engagement required positive identification before engaging. "I need better visual confirmation, sir. Moving to alternate position." "Negative." "Take the shot now, Sergeant. That's a direct order." Elena's training warred with her instincts. Every fiber of her professional development screamed that hasty shots led to civilian casualties, friendly fire incidents, and mission failures. But direct orders in combat exercises carried the weight of actual military law. "Sir, requesting 30 seconds for positive identification." "You don't have 30 seconds, Vasquez. The target is preparing to engage your team. Take the shot, or I'll mark you as failing to follow lawful orders under combat conditions." Elena felt the trap closing around her. Through her scope, she could see the figure more clearly now. It was a mannequin designed to appear ambiguous, positioned precisely to create an impossible choice. Take the shot without proper identification and fail the rules of engagement, refuse the order, and fail to follow direct commands. She made her choice. "Negative, sir. Insufficient target identification for engagement." The exercise ended immediately, with harsh electronic tones indicating mission failure. Williams's voice came through the communication system with barely concealed satisfaction. "Exercise terminated. Vasquez failed to engage legitimate target, resulting in simulated team casualties." Back in the debriefing room, Elena faced another panel of evaluators, this time focused on her failure to follow direct orders during combat operations. Sergeant Vasquez, Captain Morrison, read from his evaluation form, "You were given a direct order to engage a target that subsequent analysis confirmed was indeed carrying a weapon. Your hesitation resulted in the simulated deaths of your entire team." Elena remained standing at attention, but her voice carried steel. "Sir, the target identification was ambiguous at best. Rules of engagement require positive identification before." "Rules of engagement," Morrison interrupted, "also require following lawful orders from superior officers during combat operations. Are you suggesting that Instructor Williams's order was unlawful?" The question was another trap, carefully constructed to force Elena into either admitting insubordination or defending a position that could be twisted against her. "Sir, I'm suggesting that rules of engagement exist to prevent unnecessary casualties and mission complications." "But you didn't prevent casualties, did you, Sergeant? Your hesitation killed your team." Elena's jaw tightened. "Sir, the exercise was designed to create an impossible choice. The target was positioned and lit, specifically to make identification difficult while creating time pressure for engagement. Combat situations often involve difficult choices and time pressure, Sergeant. That's why we train." Morrison made notes in her file. "Your inability to make decisive choices under stress raises questions about your suitability for combat operations." "Sir, I've made decisive choices under actual combat stress during previous deployments. My decision-making has consistently been rated superior in all evaluation." "Previous deployments as a designated marksman," Captain Morrison corrected. "Sniper operations require different decision-making capabilities, different psychological profiles." Elena felt the conversation sliding into familiar territory, the suggestion that women possessed fundamentally different psychological capabilities that made them unsuitable for certain military roles. It was discrimination dressed up as professional assessment, bias masquerading as scientific evaluation. "Sir, my psychological evaluations have consistently shown excellent stress management and decision-making capabilities under pressure." "Yes, we've reviewed those evaluations. However, this exercise demonstrates a gap between testing and actual performance." Morrison closed her file. "We'll be conducting additional psychological assessments to better understand your decision-making processes." The psychological assessments began 2 days later with Dr. Caroline Stevens, a military psychologist who specialized in evaluating personnel for high-stress assignments. Elena entered the session expecting standard psychological evaluation procedures, but quickly realized she was facing something more sophisticated and potentially more dangerous. "Elena, I'd like you to describe your thought process during the urban warfare exercise." Dr. Stevens began, her voice professionally neutral but carrying undertones of predetermined conclusion. "I evaluated the target according to standard rules of engagement and determined that positive identification was required before engaging." "But you were given a direct order to engage. How did you resolve the conflict between following orders and following rules of engagement?" Elena recognized the question as a psychological probe designed to explore her relationship with authority, her confidence in her own judgment, and her willingness to challenge male superiors. "I prioritized rules of engagement because civilian casualties and improper target engagement create larger mission complications than brief delays in target acquisition." Dr. Stevens made notes, her expression revealing nothing. "Do you often find yourself in conflict with orders from superior officers?" "No, ma'am. This was an unusual situation where the order conflicted with established protocols." "But you chose your interpretation of protocols over a direct order from a qualified instructor." Elena felt the questioning shift toward character assassination. "I chose proper target identification procedures over hasty engagement that could have resulted in civilian casualties." "In a simulated exercise where civilian casualties weren't actually possible." "Ma'am, simulation exercises are designed to build habits and decision-making patterns that transfer to actual combat. If I develop habits of improper target engagement during training, those habits could lead to actual civilian casualties during deployment." Dr. Stevens paused in her note-taking. "That's an interesting perspective. Do you often think about the broader implications of training exercises?" Elena recognized another trap. She was being evaluated for overthinking, for complexity of analysis that might be interpreted as indecisiveness or inability to follow simple orders. "I think about the purpose and application of training, yes ma'am." "And do you think your male counterparts engage in similar levels of analysis?" The question was designed to make Elena either criticize her fellow students or suggest that her analytical approach was superior to traditional masculine decisiveness. Either answer could be used against her. I think different people have different analytical approaches, ma'am. I can only speak to my own thought processes. The session continued for 2 hours, probing every aspect of Elena's personality, motivations, and psychological responses. Dr. Stevens explored her relationship with her father, her career motivations, her responses to authority, and her feelings about being one of the few women in elite military programs. Elena, do you feel pressure to prove yourself because of your gender? I feel pressure to prove myself because this program has high standards. Gender is irrelevant to meeting those standards. But surely you're aware that your presence here is unusual, that you're being watched more closely than your male counterparts. Elena chose her words carefully. I'm aware that some people have preconceptions about women in combat roles. I focus on performance rather than perceptions. Even when those perceptions affect your career advancement? Especially when those perceptions affect my career advancement. Dr. Stevens made final notes and concluded the session with professional courtesy, but Elena left feeling psychologically dissected. Every response had been analyzed for evidence of instability, overconfidence, authority problems, or gender-related psychological issues. The campaign against Elena escalated over the following weeks, with a series of incidents that seemed random but followed a clear pattern of increasing pressure and isolation. Her mail was delayed, causing her to miss important communications from family. Her meal card malfunctioned repeatedly, forcing her to eat at irregular hours or miss meals entirely. Equipment assignments were accidentally given to other students, leaving her with inferior or malfunctioning gear during training exercises. Vasquez, your rifle scope seems to be having calibration issues, Instructor Davis observed during a routine shooting exercise. Your shots are grouping 3 inches left of center. Elena checked her equipment and immediately identified the problem. Someone had adjusted her scope's windage settings by exactly 12 clicks, enough to cause noticeable accuracy problems without appearing to be obvious sabotage. Sir, my scope has been tampered with. The windage adjustment has been moved from my recorded 0 position. Davis examined the scope with theatrical thoroughness. I don't see any evidence of tampering, Sergeant. Perhaps you failed to properly record your 0 settings. Elena felt anger rising but maintained professional control. Sir, I keep detailed logs of all equipment settings. This scope was zeroed yesterday and confirmed through multiple shots. The adjustment has definitely been changed. Are you suggesting that someone deliberately sabotaged your equipment? The question was loaded with implications of paranoia and inability to accept responsibility for poor performance. Elena realized that proving sabotage would require accusing fellow students or instructors without concrete evidence, a career-ending move regardless of whether her accusations were accurate. Sir, I'm stating that my equipment settings have been changed from their recorded positions. Well, equipment malfunctions happen, Sergeant. Part of being a sniper is adapting to unexpected equipment problems. Davis made notes in his evaluation clipboard. Continue the exercise with your equipment as configured. Elena spent the remainder of the shooting session compensating for scope adjustments she hadn't made, her performance suffering while she adapted to deliberately sabotaged equipment. Other students noticed her unusual shooting patterns, and whispers spread about her declining accuracy and inconsistent performance. Similar incidents multiplied. Training schedules changed without notification, causing Elena to miss required sessions. Equipment checkout procedures were modified specifically for her, requiring additional paperwork and supervisor approval, and her academic performance was questioned despite perfect test scores. Vasquez, your written examination showed perfect scores again, observed Captain Morrison during a weekly review session. How do you consistently perform better on written tests than your practical exercises? Elena recognized the implication that her academic performance was somehow inconsistent with her practical abilities, suggesting either academic cheating or practical incompetence. Sir, my practical exercise performance has been consistent with program standards except when equipment has been malfunctioning. Equipment seems to malfunction frequently for you, doesn't it, Sergeant? Yes, sir. More frequently than statistical probability would suggest. Morrison made notes. Or perhaps you're more sensitive to minor equipment variations than your counterparts. Some personnel adapt better to equipment inconsistencies than others. Elena realized that every response was being interpreted through a lens of predetermined conclusion. Equipment sabotage became evidence of hypersensitivity. Perfect academic performance became evidence of impractical intellectualism. Proper adherence to rules of engagement became evidence of indecisiveness. The psychological pressure was accompanied by social isolation that grew more complete each day. Fellow students who had previously been friendly became distant and suspicious. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Training partners requested reassignments to other teams. "It's nothing personal, Elena," Corporal Martinez explained when she asked about his request for partner reassignment. "It's just that, with all the controversy and everything, I don't want to get caught up in whatever's going on with you." Elena nodded, understanding the practical reality of career self-preservation in a military environment where association with controversial personnel could damage advancement opportunities. But understanding didn't make the isolation less painful or less psychologically damaging. Sergeant Chen remained her only reliable ally, but even he was careful about being seen with her too frequently or publicly. "This is getting ugly, Elena," he observed during one of their carefully discreet conversations in the base library. "They're not just questioning your shot anymore. They're systematically undermining your credibility and isolating you from support systems." "I know." Elena's voice carried the exhaustion of weeks under constant pressure. "The question is whether I can outlast their campaign or whether they'll succeed in breaking me before I can prove my worth definitively." What would definitive proof look like at this point? Elena considered the question carefully. Something so undeniable, so publicly witnessed, and so critical to mission success that they can't ignore or explain it away. She paused, her expression growing determined. "An opportunity to save lives in a way that only my specific capabilities could accomplish." Chen looked troubled. "Elena, that sounds like you're hoping for a crisis situation." "I'm not hoping for anything, Danny, but I'm preparing for whatever opportunity presents itself to demonstrate that capability matters more than politics, that performance trumps prejudice, and that the military is stronger when it judges people by what they can accomplish rather than what they look like." Outside the library windows, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly under star-filled skies, vast and indifferent to the human dramas playing out in the military installations scattered across its surface. Elena returned to her books and calculations, working late into the night on problems that had no clear solutions, preparing for challenges that hadn't yet revealed themselves. The campaign against her was sophisticated, systematic, and increasingly effective. But Elena had learned something important during 8 months of institutional resistance. She was stronger than they expected, more resilient than they hoped, and more determined than they could imagine. The question now was whether strength, resilience, and determination would be enough to overcome a system designed to exclude rather than include, to diminish rather than develop, to break rather than build. The opportunity Elena had been preparing for arrived not with fanfare, but with the sharp crack of automatic weapons fire echoing across the Nevada desert at 0347 hours on a moonless Tuesday morning. Elena woke to emergency klaxons and the sound of boots running through corridors as the base erupted into controlled chaos. "All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Elena grabbed her gear and rushed to the operations center, where she found controlled pandemonium. Multiple screens displayed satellite feeds, radio communications crackled with urgent reports, and officers clustered around situation maps with grim expressions. "What's the situation?" she asked Sergeant Chen, who was monitoring communication equipment with intense focus. "Helicopter went down approximately 40 clicks northeast of here. Special operations team was conducting a training exercise when they took ground fire from unknown hostiles." Chen's voice carried professional calm, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders. 6 personnel on board. We have confirmed survivors, but they're pinned down by sniper fire from elevated positions." Colonel Martinez appeared at Elena's shoulder, his expression grave. "Vasquez, I need to know your current readiness status. Full combat load, precision shooting configuration." Elena's pulse quickened. "Sir, I'm fully mission capable. Equipment ready, ammunition loaded, physical condition optimal." "Good. We have a problem that requires very specific capabilities." Martinez led her to the main situation display, where satellite imagery showed rugged desert terrain broken by rocky outcroppings and deep ravines. "The survivors are trapped in a depression here, approximately 600 meters from the crash site. Hostile snipers have positioned themselves on elevated positions here, here, and here. He pointed to 3 locations on the screen. Range to targets varies from 800 to 1,500 meters. Elena studied the imagery, her mind automatically calculating angles, wind considerations, and tactical challenges. "Sir, what assets are available for rescue operations?" "Limited. The hostiles have sophisticated equipment and training. They've already engaged 2 rescue helicopters with effective anti-aircraft fire. Ground approach is complicated by terrain and overlapping fields of fire." Martinez's expression grew more serious. "We have aerial reconnaissance confirming that hostile snipers are using thermal optics and have clear line of sight to the survivors' position." Elena felt pieces clicking into place. "Sir, you need someone who can engage multiple targets at extended range with enough precision to eliminate the threat without endangering the survivors." "That's exactly what we need. The question is whether you're prepared for actual combat operations under these conditions." Elena looked at the screen, analyzing the tactical situation with the same methodical approach she applied to training exercises. But this wasn't training. Lives hung in the balance, and failure would mean watching fellow service members die while she proved inadequate to save them. "Sir, I'm ready." Martinez nodded. "Equipment prep in 15 minutes. Aircraft departure in 30. You'll be accompanied by a full rescue team, but your mission is specifically counter-sniper operations." Elena raced to the armory, her movements efficient and automatic despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. She selected her precision rifle, checked ammunition specifications, and verified scope settings with mechanical precision. But underneath the professional preparation, she felt the weight of 8 months of doubt and skepticism crystallizing into this single opportunity. The helicopter flight to the area of operations was conducted in tactical silence, with Elena reviewing satellite imagery and wind data while mentally preparing for the most important shooting of her career. The terrain below looked like the surface of an alien planet, jagged rocks and deep shadows painted in the green glow of night vision equipment. 2 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced through the communication system. Weather conditions. Wind from northwest at 5 to 8 miles per hour, gusting to 12. Temperature 42 degrees. Clear skies, no precipitation. Elena acknowledged the weather report while fine-tuning her equipment. The wind conditions were manageable, but required careful compensation for shots at the extended ranges they were facing. Temperature and atmospheric pressure would affect bullet trajectory, but within acceptable parameters for precision engagement. The helicopter settled into a landing zone approximately 1 kilometer from the hostile positions, far enough to avoid immediate detection, but close enough for Elena to reach effective firing positions quickly. She deployed with the rescue team, carrying her rifle and additional equipment across terrain that would have challenged mountain goats. "Overwatch position established," reported Staff Sergeant Williams, the team leader, as they reached a rocky outcropping that provided clear line of sight to the hostile positions. "Vasquez, you have clear fields of fire to all 3 targets." Elena settled into her shooting position, adjusting bipod legs and checking scope settings while the rescue team prepared for their assault on the survivors' position. Through her scope, she could see muzzle flashes from the hostile positions and, occasionally, the thermal signatures of enemy snipers as they moved between covered positions. "Contact! We have eyes on survivors," came the report from the reconnaissance element. 6 personnel, all alive, but 2 showing signs of serious injury. They're effectively pinned down by accurate fire from elevated positions. Elena studied the hostile positions through her scope, analyzing movement patterns and calculating engagement priorities. The enemy snipers were skilled and disciplined, using covered positions and coordinated fire to maintain suppression of the survivors while avoiding exposure to counterfire. "Hostile sniper, position Alpha, range 847 meters, Elena reported through her communication system. Good concealment, limited exposure windows. Moving to position Beta, range 1, 134 meters, active engagement of friendly forces. Roger, Overwatch. You are cleared to engage all hostile targets. Repeat, you are cleared to engage." Elena felt the familiar calm settling over her as she entered the mental state she'd cultivated through thousands of hours of training. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and the world narrowed to the precise relationship between crosshairs, target, and the mathematical calculations that would govern success or failure. The first shot was the most critical. It would announce her presence to the other hostile snipers and begin a deadly game of action and reaction across the desert landscape. Elena chose the target that posed the greatest immediate threat to the survivors, a sniper in position beta who was maintaining almost continuous fire on the pinned-down rescue team. Wind compensation, 2 minutes left. Range, 134 meters. Target movement, minimal. Atmospheric conditions, stable. Elena's finger found the trigger, applying the precise pressure she'd practiced 10,000 times. The rifle's report cracked across the desert, followed immediately by the whistle of the bullet cutting through morning air. Target down, position beta, came the confirmation from the spotting team. Clean hit, hostile neutralized. The enemy response was immediate and professional. The remaining snipers adjusted their positions and began scanning for Elena's location while maintaining suppression fire on the survivors. Elena had perhaps 60 seconds before they identified her position and began returning accurate fire. She shifted her aim to position Alpha, where the hostile sniper had moved to a different concealment point. The range was shorter, but the target was better protected, showing only occasional glimpses of thermal signature as he moved between firing positions. Movement. Position Alpha, Elena reported. Target partially concealed, intermittent exposure. She waited, crosshairs steady on the point where logic and training told her the target would appear. 3 seconds. 5. 8. There, a thermal signature shifted position, creating a brief window of opportunity. The second shot was more difficult, requiring Elena to lead a moving target while compensating for wind and the target's partial concealment. But her calculations were precise, her execution flawless. Target down, position Alpha, 2 hostiles neutralized. The third position was the most challenging, maximum range at 547 meters, with the hostile sniper now fully aware of Elena's presence and actively trying to locate and engage her position. The enemy marksman was skilled, disciplined, and fighting for his life. Elena watched through her scope as muzzle flashes appeared from position Charlie, some directed toward the survivors and others searching for her location. The hostile sniper was using a combination of suppression fire and reconnaissance by fire, trying to force Elena to reveal her position while maintaining pressure on the rescue operation. Hostile sniper, position Charlie, has identified general area of our position, Staff Sergeant Williams reported, taking occasional fire but no direct hits yet. Elena knew she had 1 or 2 shots before the enemy marksman pinpointed her exact location and made her position untenable. At 547 meters, with a target actively evading and returning fire, she needed perfection on the first shot. Wind had increased slightly, now gusting to nearly 15 miles per hour from the northwest. Range was at the extreme edge of her weapon system's effective envelope. The target was using excellent tactical movement, never exposing himself for more than brief moments. Elena forced herself to remain patient, watching movement patterns and calculating probabilities. The hostile sniper was good, but he was also predictable. His movement patterns showed a slight preference for one particular firing position, and his timing between movements had developed a rhythm that she could exploit. She waited, crosshairs steady on empty space, trusting her analysis and the mathematical calculations that governed precision shooting at extreme range. 10 seconds. 15. 20. The target appeared exactly where and when Elena had predicted, thermal signature clear for perhaps 2 seconds before he would move to the next position. Elena's shot broke at the precise moment of optimal exposure, the bullet beginning its 2-second flight across the Nevada desert toward a target that didn't yet know he was dead. Target down, position Charlie. All hostile snipers neutralized. The confirmation came with the sound of decreasing enemy fire and immediate movement from the rescue team toward the survivors' position. Elena maintained overwatch, scanning for additional threats, while the rescue operation proceeded with sudden efficiency. Survivors recovered, all 6 personnel accounted for, came the report 20 minutes later. 2 serious injuries requiring immediate medical evacuation, but all personnel are alive and stable. Elena began the methodical process of securing her equipment and preparing for extraction, but part of her mind was already processing the implications of what had just occurred. She had engaged and neutralized 3 hostile snipers at ranges from 847 to 547 meters under combat conditions with 0 collateral damage and perfect mission success. More importantly, she had done it while being observed by military personnel who could not question her equipment, her methods, or her results. The helicopter flight back to base was conducted in a different atmosphere than the outbound journey. The rescued personnel were being treated by medics, but Elena could see them looking at her with expressions she'd never encountered before. Not skepticism or curiosity, but professional respect earned through demonstrated capability under the ultimate test. Staff Sergeant Williams settled into the seat beside her, his combat gear still dusty from the desert operation. "Vasquez, I've been in special operations for 12 years. I've worked with some of the best snipers in the military." He paused, looking at her directly. "What you did out there wasn't just good shooting, that was combat artistry." Elena felt a flutter of pride but kept her response professional. "Thank you, Staff Sergeant." The mission's success was a team effort. "Bullshit." Williams's reply was blunt but respectful. "You eliminated 3 hostile snipers at extended range under combat conditions without a single miss. The rescue team was able to complete their mission because you created the tactical conditions for success." He gestured toward the rescued personnel. "Those 6 people are alive because you can do things with a rifle that most people consider impossible." Word of the successful rescue operation spread through the base with the speed of military communications. By the time Elena returned to her quarters to clean equipment and file after-action reports, the atmosphere around her had begun to change in subtle but unmistakable ways. Fellow students who had been avoiding her now nodded respectfully when she passed in corridors. Instructors who had been questioning her capabilities now spoke to her with professional courtesy rather than skeptical evaluation. Even personnel who had never interacted with her before seemed to know who she was and what she had accomplished. "Elena." Sergeant Chen found her in the armory, methodically cleaning her rifle with the same precision she applied to everything else. "Holy shit, the whole base is talking about your mission." Elena looked up from her work, noting that Chen was using her first name openly for the first time in weeks. "The mission was successful. 6 personnel rescued, all hostiles neutralized, no friendly casualties." "Elena, you killed 3 enemy snipers at ranges most people can't even see clearly. Under combat conditions, at night, with perfect accuracy." Chen sat down across from her, his expression serious. "Do you understand what this means?" Elena paused in her cleaning routine. "It means I accomplished the mission I was assigned. It means you did something that's going to be studied in sniper schools for the next 50 years. It means you proved, under combat conditions and with multiple witnesses, that you're not just qualified for this program, you're better than anyone they've graduated in the past decade." Elena felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. Combat success should have resolved the questions about her capabilities, but her experience with institutional bias made her cautious about assuming that performance would automatically overcome prejudice. Her caution proved justified when Colonel Martinez summoned her to his office 12 hours after the mission completion. Elena entered expecting congratulations or, at minimum, professional recognition for mission success. Instead, she found Martinez reviewing files with an expression that suggested complications rather than celebration. "Sit down, Elena. We need to discuss the operational after-action reports and their potential implications." Elena felt familiar tension building in her shoulders. "Sir, is there a problem with the mission results?" The mission results were exemplary. 6 personnel rescued, all hostile threats neutralized, 0 friendly casualties. Martinez closed the file and looked at her directly. "The problem is that your performance was so exceptional that it's raising new questions about program standards and selection criteria." Elena blinked, trying to process the illogical statement. "Sir, I don't understand how exceptional performance creates problems." "Elena, you eliminated 3 hostile snipers at extended range with perfect accuracy under combat conditions. That level of performance exceeds anything achieved by snipers with years of additional training and combat experience." Martinez's voice carried warning. "Some people are questioning how a trainee could achieve results that surpass veteran operators." The implication was clear, and Elena felt anger rising despite her professional training. "Sir, are you suggesting that my combat performance is somehow suspicious?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you that other people are raising questions." Martinez opened another file. "There are requests for additional investigation into your training methods, equipment specifications, and background qualifications." Elena realized she was witnessing the ultimate expression of institutional bias, success so visible that it couldn't be ignored, so it had to be explained away through suspicion rather than recognition. "Sir, what specific questions are being raised?" Questions about whether your training methods constitute an unfair advantage over other candidates. Questions about whether your technical background provides capabilities beyond standard program parameters. Questions about whether exceptional individual performance creates unrealistic expectations for program graduates. Elena felt the weight of institutional resistance settling over her like a familiar burden. Excellence had become evidence of cheating. Capability had become cause for suspicion. Success had become reason for investigation. Sir, respectfully, I've used only standard equipment and training methods available to all candidates. My technical background has been known and documented throughout my participation in this program, and my performance has been achieved through dedication, study, and practice, not through any unfair advantages. Martinez nodded. I know that, Elena. You know that. But institutional politics don't always align with logical analysis. He leaned back in his chair. The question now is how to manage the recognition you deserve while navigating the resistance your success has created. Elena felt the conversation moving into territory she'd hoped to avoid, political compromise rather than merit-based evaluation. Sir, what are you recommending? I'm recommending that you continue being exactly who you are while understanding that exceptional people face exceptional challenges. Martinez's expression grew serious. Your combat performance yesterday proves that you belong in this program. More than that, it proves that this program needs people like you. But proving that to the bureaucracy is going to require patience and strategic thinking. Elena left Martinez's office with contradictory feelings of triumph and frustration. She had achieved combat success beyond any reasonable standard, had saved lives through capabilities that others considered impossible, and had proven her worth under the ultimate test of actual combat conditions. But instead of celebration and recognition, she faced new investigations, increased scrutiny, and the familiar suggestion that her success was somehow suspicious rather than admirable. That evening, Elena returned to her quarters to find an unexpected visitor waiting for her. Dr. Caroline Stevens, the military psychologist who had conducted her previous evaluation. Elena, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I wanted to speak with you about yesterday's mission and its psychological implications. Elena felt her defenses rising. Ma'am, I'm prepared to participate in any required psychological evaluations. This isn't an evaluation, Elena. It's a conversation. Dr. Stevens gestured to the chairs in Elena's small living area. May I sit? Elena nodded, curious about this change in approach. Elena, what you accomplished yesterday was remarkable, not just from a tactical perspective, but from a psychological one. Dr. Stevens's voice carried genuine interest rather than clinical assessment. You performed at an elite level under extreme stress, with lives depending on your accuracy, while knowing that your performance would be scrutinized and potentially questioned. Elena remained silent, unsure where the conversation was leading. I've been reviewing your psychological profile, your training records, and the circumstances of your participation in this program. Dr. Stevens paused. Elena, I owe you an apology. Elena blinked, surprised by the unexpected admission. My previous evaluation was influenced by institutional biases I thought I had overcome. I was looking for psychological reasons why a woman might not succeed in this program, rather than evaluating your actual psychological capabilities. Dr. Stevens's voice carried professional honesty. Yesterday's mission results make it clear that my evaluation was flawed, not your psychological profile. Elena felt a loosening of tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. Thank you, ma'am. That means more than you know. Elena, you're going to face continued resistance from people who can't accept that their assumptions about gender and military capability are wrong. But you're also going to have allies, people who recognize that capability matters more than convention. Dr. Stevens stood to leave. Count me among the allies. Your psychological profile shows exactly what elite military operations require. Exceptional stress management, superior decision-making, and unwavering commitment to mission success. As Dr. Stevens left, Elena realized that yesterday's mission had accomplished something beyond successful rescue operations. It had forced people to choose sides, to support capability over bias, performance over prejudice, reality over assumption. Some would continue to resist, to question, to search for explanations that preserved their worldview. But others would recognize truth when they saw it, would acknowledge excellence when it was demonstrated, would choose fairness over familiarity. Elena spent the evening writing detailed after-action reports and preparing for whatever challenges tomorrow would bring. Outside her window, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly under star-filled skies. Vast and indifferent to human politics, but somehow supportive of human achievement. She had proven herself under the ultimate test. She had saved lives through capabilities others considered impossible. She had forced recognition of reality over assumption. The question now was whether institutional change could keep pace with individual excellence, whether the military could evolve quickly enough to embrace the capabilities it needed rather than the conventions it expected. 6 months after the desert rescue operation, Elena stood before a congressional subcommittee in a sterile Washington, D.C. hearing room, facing questions that would determine not just her future, but the future of women in elite military combat roles. The rescue mission had achieved something unprecedented. It had forced the military bureaucracy to confront the gap between their assumptions and reality. Sergeant Vasquez, Congresswoman Rebecca Martinez leaned forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to demanding answers from generals and defense contractors. Your performance during the October rescue operation has been described as exceptional by multiple witnesses. Can you walk us through the tactical challenges you faced? Elena stood at attention behind the witness table, her dress uniform bearing ribbons that told the story of her service, the Bronze Star with V device for valor during the rescue operation, the Expert Marksmanship badge with multiple competition bars, and the Combat Action badge that marked her as a veteran who had faced enemy fire. But the most significant addition was the small blue and silver pin that identified her as a graduate of the Army Sniper School, a designation that had come with conditions and complications she was still navigating. Ma'am, the primary tactical challenge was engaging multiple hostile snipers at extended ranges while avoiding collateral damage to friendly forces. The targets were positioned at ranges from 847 to 547 meters, using terrain and concealment that required precise shot placement to neutralize the threat without endangering the rescue operation. Congressman William Hayes, no relation to Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, but sharing similar skepticism about women in combat, consulted his notes with theatrical precision. Sergeant, multiple military experts have testified that the shots you made were at the extreme edge of technical possibility. Some have suggested that luck, rather than skill, might explain your success. Elena had learned to navigate these political minefields with the same precision she applied to long-range shooting. Sir, luck is not a sustainable tactical advantage. The techniques I used are based on mathematical calculations, environmental analysis, and training procedures that can be taught and replicated. Luck doesn't account for 3 consecutive hits at extended range under combat conditions. But surely you understand the skepticism Congressman Hayes pressed. Your performance exceeded that of snipers with years of additional training and combat experience. How do you explain such exceptional results? Elena felt the familiar weight of having to justify excellence rather than simply demonstrate it. Sir, exceptional results come from exceptional preparation combined with appropriate application of technique under pressure. My technical background allows me to approach precision shooting from an analytical perspective that complements traditional training methods. Congresswoman Martinez intervened before Hayes could continue his line of questioning. Sergeant Vasquez, I'd like to focus on the institutional response to your success. What changes have you observed in the sniper program since your graduation? Elena chose her words carefully, knowing that her response would be analyzed by military leadership and could affect policy decisions that would impact future female candidates. Ma'am, there have been several positive developments. The program has implemented more comprehensive technical training that incorporates advanced ballistic analysis. There's increased emphasis on mental preparation and stress management techniques. And most importantly, evaluation criteria now focus more heavily on demonstrated performance rather than assumptions about capability. And have these changes improved overall program effectiveness? Yes, ma'am. The most recent class graduated with higher average scores in both technical knowledge and practical application than any previous class in the program's history. When you raise standards for everyone, everyone performs better. General Patricia Williams, the Army's highest-ranking female officer and a key supporter of integrated combat units, testified next with the institutional authority that Elena's individual excellence couldn't provide. This subcommittee needs to understand that Sergeant Vasquez's success isn't an anomaly. It's evidence of untapped potential that we've been systematically excluding from our most elite units. General Williams stated with the confidence of someone who had fought similar battles throughout her career. The October rescue operation succeeded because we had the right person with the right skills in the right position. Gender was irrelevant to mission success. General Williams clicked through a presentation that Elena had helped develop, showing statistical analysis of integrated training programs across multiple military specialties. The data was compelling. Mixed gender units consistently outperformed single gender units in complex problem-solving scenarios, mission planning exercises, and adaptability assessments. The evidence is clear, quote, General Williams continued. Diversity of perspective and capability strengthens military effectiveness. Sergeant Vasquez proves that when we evaluate people based on performance rather than prejudice, we discover capabilities we didn't know we were missing. But resistance remained embedded in institutional culture, as demonstrated by General Robert Morrison's contrary testimony. Morrison represented the traditionalist perspective that viewed Elena's success as an exception that proved the rule, rather than evidence that the rule was wrong. While Sergeant Vasquez's performance was commendable, General Morrison testified with carefully neutral language. We must consider whether individual exceptional cases justify wholesale changes to programs that have been successful for decades. Military effectiveness depends on reliable, consistent performance across all personnel, not exceptional individual achievements. Elena watched from the gallery as General Morrison presented his case for maintaining existing standards and selection criteria, arguing that her success was too unusual to base policy changes upon. His arguments were sophisticated and carefully constructed to sound reasonable while fundamentally missing the point. Furthermore, Morrison continued, we must consider the broader implications of modifying elite programs to accommodate personnel who require different training methods or evaluation criteria. Military units must function as cohesive teams with standardized capabilities and expectations. Elena felt frustration rising as she listened to arguments that transformed her exceptional performance into evidence that she was somehow different from standard military personnel. The logic was circular and self-defeating. Excel too much and you prove you don't belong. Perform normally and you prove you're not qualified for elite programs. The congressional hearing continued for 2 days, with Elena testifying alongside other pioneers in military integration. Major Sarah Chen spoke about her experiences as one of the first women in Army Ranger School. Captain Maria Rodriguez described leading combat operations in Afghanistan. Commander Jennifer Walsh discussed her role as a Navy SEAL team leader. Each woman had faced similar challenges, proving capability in the face of institutional skepticism, performing under heightened scrutiny, and achieving excellence that was questioned rather than celebrated. But each had also created pathways for others, demonstrating that capability existed across gender lines when opportunity was provided. The pattern is clear across all services and specialties, Congresswoman Martinez observed during her closing remarks. When women are given genuine opportunities to compete and serve in elite units, some fail, just like their male counterparts. But some excel beyond expectations, bringing capabilities and perspectives that strengthen overall military effectiveness. 3 weeks after the congressional hearings, Elena received orders that would define the next phase of her career: assignment to the newly created Integrated Combat Training Development Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Her role would be senior instructor for precision marksmanship, with additional responsibilities for curriculum development and institutional integration programs. The assignment represented both recognition and challenge. Elena would be teaching the techniques she'd developed to a new generation of snipers, both male and female, while continuing to prove that excellence could be sustained and replicated rather than dismissed as exceptional anomaly. Her first class at Fort Bragg included 12 students, 8 men and 4 women, all selected based on demonstrated marksmanship capability and psychological suitability for precision shooting roles. Elena looked at their faces during the initial briefing and saw a reflection of her own journey. Determination mixed with uncertainty, confidence tempered by awareness of the challenges ahead. This program is different from traditional sniper training in several important ways. Elena began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned respect through performance rather than rank. We're going to focus heavily on the mathematical and scientific foundations of precision shooting. We're going to incorporate advanced training technologies that provide immediate feedback and accelerated learning. And we're going to evaluate your progress based solely on demonstrated capability rather than any other factors. Sergeant First Class Michael Davidson, a veteran marksman with combat experience, raised his hand. "Ma'am, how does this approach compare to traditional training methods?" Elena smiled, recognizing the question as genuine inquiry rather than challenge. Traditional methods are excellent for building fundamental skills and tactical awareness. What we're adding is deeper technical understanding that allows for more precise environmental compensation, better equipment utilization, and faster adaptation to unusual shooting scenarios. She gestured to the advanced training equipment that filled the classroom: computerized shooting simulators, ballistic calculation software, environmental monitoring systems, and precision manufacturing tools for customizing ammunition and equipment. For example, traditional training teaches you to compensate for wind by observing environmental indicators and applying rules of thumb. We're going to teach you to measure wind speed, direction, and gradient at multiple points along your bullet's flight path, then calculate precise compensation values using atmospheric physics. Private First Class Jessica Martinez, one of the female students, looked up from notes she was taking with obvious enthusiasm. "Ma'am, is this the kind of analysis you used during the October rescue operation?" Elena nodded. "Exactly. When you're engaging targets at 500+ meters under combat conditions, rules of thumb aren't sufficient. You need precise calculations and absolute confidence in your data." The training program Elena developed combined traditional marksmanship instruction with advanced technical education that would have been familiar in aerospace engineering programs. Students learned atmospheric physics, materials, science, computer programming, and manufacturing techniques alongside traditional fieldcraft and tactical procedures. "Why do we need to understand barrel harmonics?" asked Staff Sergeant Robert Wilson during a technical session focused on equipment customization. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Elena gestured to the oscilloscope display showing vibration patterns in a rifle barrel during firing. "Because every shot creates specific vibration patterns in your barrel, and those vibrations affect where your bullet exits the muzzle. If you understand the physics, you can tune your ammunition and equipment to work with your rifle's harmonic characteristics rather than against them." She demonstrated by firing 2 different ammunition loads through the same rifle, showing how slight variations in bullet weight and powder charge created dramatically different accuracy results at long range. Traditional training treats equipment as standardized, but every rifle is unique. Every barrel has specific characteristics. Every scope has individual optical properties. Elena's hands moved with practiced precision as she adjusted scope settings based on measurements rather than trial and error. When you understand the technical details, you can optimize your equipment for maximum precision rather than accepting whatever accuracy you happen to achieve. The students absorbed these lessons with varying degrees of enthusiasm, but Elena quickly identified those who grasped the deeper implications of technical precision shooting. Private Martinez demonstrated natural aptitude for mathematical calculation and environmental analysis. Sergeant Davidson applied his combat experience to the new techniques with impressive adaptation. Corporal Jennifer Walsh, another female student, showed exceptional ability to integrate technical knowledge with tactical application. 6 months into the program, Elena's students were achieving accuracy standards that exceeded traditional sniper school graduates while demonstrating superior technical knowledge and adaptability. The success was creating attention from military leadership and requests for program expansion to other training facilities. "Elena, your students are performing at levels we've never seen in baseline training programs," Colonel Martinez observed during a program review session. He'd been promoted and assigned to oversee the Integrated Combat Training Development Center, bringing his support for merit-based evaluation to a position with broader institutional influence. "We're getting requests from Special Operations Command, Marine Corps, and even CIA for access to your training methods." Elena felt pride in her students' achievements, but also awareness that success would bring increased scrutiny and political pressure. "Sir, the methods work because they're based on sound technical principles and because the students are selected for aptitude rather than demographics. Expanding too quickly could dilute quality if we don't maintain selection standards." Agreed. But we also can't ignore the strategic implications of this capability. Martinez showed her classified reports documenting the program's broader impact. "Your graduates are being assigned to units worldwide, and their performance is creating tactical advantages that our opponents are struggling to counter." Elena reviewed the reports with growing understanding of how individual excellence could cascade into institutional change. Her students weren't just performing well in training. They were saving lives in combat, completing missions that had previously been considered impossible, and demonstrating capabilities that were reshaping military tactical doctrine. "Sir, what's the long-term vision for this program?" Martinez leaned back in his chair. "The long-term vision is that your approach becomes the standard rather than the exception. That technical excellence and analytical thinking become normal parts of military training rather than unusual additions. That we select and develop personnel based on demonstrated capability rather than traditional assumptions." 6 months later, Elena stood before her first graduating class, looking at 12 students who had exceeded every expectation and redefined what was possible in precision shooting training. Private Martinez had achieved accuracy standards that qualified her for immediate assignment to Delta Force operations. Sergeant Davidson had developed new techniques for urban warfare precision shooting that were being incorporated into tactical manuals. Corporal Walsh had designed equipment modifications that improved accuracy while reducing weight and complexity. "You've proven something important during your time here." Elena addressed the graduating class with pride she didn't attempt to hide. "You've proven that excellence is achievable when training is based on scientific principles rather than tradition, when evaluation is based on performance rather than assumption, and when opportunity is provided based on capability rather than convention." She gestured to the Advanced Marksmanship Medal that each graduate would receive, a new decoration created specifically to recognize the technical expertise and tactical capability they had demonstrated. "More importantly, you've proven that raising standards benefits everyone. When we demand technical excellence, mathematical precision, and analytical thinking from all personnel, overall performance improves across the board." Elena paused, looking at faces that reflected determination, confidence, and professional pride that had been earned through demonstrated achievement. "Each of you will now go forward to units where you'll face challenges and opportunities to demonstrate these capabilities under operational conditions. Some people will question your methods because they're different from traditional approaches. Some will question your results because they exceed what they believe is possible." She thought about her own journey, the resistance she'd faced, and the gradual recognition that had come through undeniable performance. "Remember that your job isn't to convince skeptics or educate doubters. Your job is to accomplish missions, save lives, and prove through action that capability matters more than convention. Excellence speaks for itself, but only if you maintain the standards you've achieved here." The graduation ceremony concluded with assignments that would scatter Elena's students across the globe: special operations units in Afghanistan, counterterrorism operations in Africa, maritime special operations in the Pacific, and advanced training positions in the United States. Each assignment represented an opportunity to demonstrate that the capabilities they developed could be sustained and applied under real-world conditions. 2 years after graduation, Elena received reports that filled her with professional satisfaction and personal pride. Private Martinez had been promoted to sergeant and was training other precision shooters in Afghanistan. Sergeant Davidson had developed new urban warfare tactics that were saving civilian lives in counterterrorism operations. Corporal Walsh had been selected for assignment to a classified special operations unit where her technical innovations were providing decisive tactical advantages. But the most significant development was institutional. The Integrated Combat Training Development Center had been expanded to include programs from multiple military specialties, from aviation to intelligence analysis to logistics coordination. Elena's approach, combining technical excellence with traditional military training, was becoming standard practice rather than experimental exception. "Elena, you've accomplished something remarkable," General Williams observed during a program review conference. "You've proven that individual excellence can drive institutional change when it's sustained and systematized rather than dismissed as anomaly." Elena looked around the conference room filled with military leaders who were implementing programs based on principles she'd developed through personal necessity. Technical education was being integrated into basic training. Advanced analytical methods were being applied to traditional military problems. Selection criteria were being modified to identify capability rather than conformity. "General, the credit belongs to all the people who chose to support capability over convention, who chose merit over assumption." Elena's voice carried the confidence of someone who had proven her point beyond any reasonable doubt. Individual excellence only matters if institutions are willing to learn from it rather than resist it. Elena's story had become larger than her personal achievement. It had become evidence that military effectiveness improved when talent was identified and developed regardless of source, when training was based on scientific principles rather than tradition, and when evaluation was based on demonstrated performance rather than demographic assumptions. The young woman who had been told she'd never make sniper had not only graduated from the program, but had revolutionized it, creating training methods that produced better results for all personnel, while proving that excellence could overcome institutional bias when sustained through professional dedication and undeniable performance. Ho Ata